In our previous episode, we explored the beginning of the Anarchy and King Henry's attempt of having his daughter, the Empress Matilda, proclaimed as the heir of England and Normandy. But King Henry died on the 1st of December 1135 after a short illness, and Empress Matilda wasn't in the best position to claim the throne, as she was pregnant for the third time, making travel across the English Channel difficult. As with any death of a king in the early Middle Ages, most barons and lords would be busy hurrying to protect their lands from private wars or raiding until a new king could restore order. And as Empress Matilda was pregnant, she could do little to restore order, and as the news of the king's death spread, the Normans, as described by a source, abandoned themselves to robbery and pillage. Greedy brigands rushed out ready for evil. The man who took the initiative to respond to the chaos was Stephen of Blois, Empress Matilda's first cousin, and under King Henry, Stephen had accumulated lands and wealth thanks to his loyalty to King Henry, and he himself was a capable military leader, a trait Empress Matilda lacked. Stephen, who was in Blois, took advantage of the situation and set sail for England with a small retinue. Despite the crossing being dangerous for this time of year, he arrived in London on the 8th of December 1135, where he was welcomed with open arms from the Londoners. Of course, the most important part of claiming any kingship is to secure the Royal Treasury, as money can pay for an army to make sure you stay king. The Royal Treasury was located in the ancient city of Winchester, and one advantage Stephen had was that his brother Henry was the Bishop of Winchester, and his support would be incredibly useful in securing the throne. The boldness in which Stephen moved to claim the throne won him support very quickly, as Empress Matilda was unpopular with the nobility, and many nobles despised her husband and would have revolted at the prospect of Geoffrey becoming king, despite King Henry never mentioning the idea while he was still alive. With both the capital and the treasury secure, Stephen only had one last objective. In order to be crowned king, he needed to be crowned by the Archbishop of Canterbury, as he was the head of the Catholic Church in England. However, upon meeting with the Archbishop, Stephen was reminded of the oaths he had taken to support Empress Matilda as heir when King Henry was alive, and as it was a holy oath sworn on relics, Stephen would be condemning his soul. Yet Stephen and his retinue retorted that on King Henry's death he retracted the oath sworn and that he regretted forcing his barons to swear such an oath. Whether this is true or not is up to debate. Stephen also had one last cunning card to play, his wife Matilda of Blois, who we'll call Queen Matilda from now on, was a direct descendant of Scottish royalty and Countess of Blois. With her and Stephen's union, their children would have claims to several dynasties, something that King Henry had preached when promoting Empress Matilda as his heir in 1127. With the Archbishop convinced, Stephen's coronation was conducted quickly, and on the 22nd of December 1135, Stephen was crowned king with the full support of the church. And to signify his rule, King Stephen attended the burial of King Henry at Reading Abbey. The crowning was so quick that the Normans, upon hearing the news that Stephen was now king of the English, swiftly took counsel and asked Stephen's brother, Theobald, to agree to let Stephen be Duke of Normandy, as they probably didn't want another civil war between two brothers again. Theobald reluctantly agreed. King Stephen's reign was progressing smoothly, as he was described as a popular man and easy to get on with plenty of charisma to spare. As his first Easter court was filled with plenty of barons in attendance, including Empress Matilda's half-brother, Robert of Gloucester. He was a powerful landowner, and his homage would be key in keeping the throne secure. The chronicler William of Malmesbury writes that Robert gave King Stephen his homage, but was secretly working to help Empress Matilda, but he was waiting for the right time, as King Stephen's current position was too strong to combat, Of course, it could be that Robert was more concerned about keeping his lands than secretly plotting to aid his sister. Back in Anjou, Empress Matilda was still in the stages of pregnancy and suffering heavily from morning sickness. But she wasn't totally inactive. By mid-December of 1135, Empress Matilda was in Normandy claiming her right. She was unaware that her cousin had already been crowned, but she knew that Normandy would be the first of her new territories to give her issues implementing her reign. The castles of Argentan, Exeter, and Domfront were handed over with no issues. Argentan would act as Empress Matilda's main command hub for a few years. Empress Matilda would eventually learn that her cousin had taken the throne despite swearing to uphold her as heir. Her anger at learning this fact showed she was King Henry's daughter. She could have cursed herself for being born female, as had she been a man unburdened with the labour of pregnancy, she could have easily claimed the throne. But her cause wasn't lost just yet. Her most powerful ally, her uncle, King David of Scotland, invaded the north of England in the winter of 1135. As using Empress Matilda's claim was a handy excuse to earn some revenue or even gain land, as King David was quickly capturing northern English towns and cities such as Carlisle, Newcastle and Durham. King Stephen moved quickly to counter the Scottish threat by hiring a large mercenary army along with his own forces and marched straight to Durham to meet King David. The Scots were now outnumbered and far from home during the winter, and a pitched battle wouldn't be in both parties' interests. So a treaty was made that King David would return the land he had taken in return for Carlisle Castle. With the treaty agreed, King David made his way back to Scotland, but this won't be the last time we see the Scottish king in action. With one of the biggest possible threats dealt with, King Stephen's reign was looking more stable. But soon several events would cause anarchy in England. The Welsh would seek to regain their lost territories from the Norman Marcher Lords, and Baldwin, the first Earl of Devon, threw down the gauntlet and claimed the city of Exeter for himself. This was a serious challenge for King Stephen's authority, as he couldn't just have nobles just taking cities and reinforcing them with their own garrisons. King Stephen was quick to mobilise and reached Exeter by June of 1136. He quickly besieged the castle as the citizens welcomed King Stephen and opened the gates of the city for him. Baldwin became annoyed at the citizens and rode out in an attempt to sack the town, but King Stephen's troops counterattacked and pushed back the assault. However, the siege was now at a stalemate, as Exeter Castle was a well-fortified stone structure that William the Conqueror personally ordered to be constructed back in 1068. And as King Stephen lacked any siege engines, this would tie him down for the next 3 months. The deeds of Stephen, one of the main sources for this period, tells us that King Stephen threw himself into the siege and was on the front lines leading, as day and night he vigorously and energetically pressed on with the siege. He also joined with his men assaulting the ramparts, and despite the defenders holding out, King Stephen kept up enthusiastically the pressure. The summer would soon come and be described as one of the hottest. One of the chronicler states that the intense heat was the operation of divine power. As the defenders' water supply began to run low, they resorted to using wine for everything, from cooking and boiling what supplies they had left, and even had to use wine to make bread from their grain stores. Eventually the wine ran out, and the defenders asked for mercy from King Stephen. Now the king's brother, the Bishop of Winchester, demanded that King Stephen show no mercy to these men, but several of Baldwin's family, including his own wife, begged the king to show mercy. Common warfare practice at this period in time would be allowing the remaining garrison to leave with honour intact, especially towards subjects of the king. But let's take a moment to reflect on what you might do. So the siege itself had cost thousands, nearly emptying the Royal Treasury, and had tied King Stephen up for months, where he was needed elsewhere. Now, as a new king who needed to state his authority, what would you do? Would you allow these men to go free, or would you make a bloody example of them? Remember what King Henry had done to the rebels in Normandy. Regardless of what you might do, King Stephen was now satisfied that the siege was over and allowed the garrison to go free along with Baldwin. But Baldwin had already escaped to the Isle of Wight, where he had a substantial navy, and soon he took his forces to Anjou to swear loyalty to Empress Matilda. King Stephen's clemency would eventually come back to hound him. Thank you all for watching. A big shout out to our Patreon supporter Gerrymandering. If you would like to support the channel, you can do so now through Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.